Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz deflecting on the fraud schemes that prosecutors say led to the theft of more than $1 billion in taxpayer funds. Many of the defendants are members of the state's Somali community. Let's bring in Minnesota House Speaker Lisa DeMeth. She is running against Tim Walz for governor. That election is next year. Lisa, for people who are catching up from the holiday weekend, how would you describe the fraud that was happening in Minnesota?
Fraud in Minnesota under the watch of Governor Walz has exploded in his 7 years as governor. There are 28 known scandals of fraud, just over 7 years. And as you heard, Dana, he has said that he takes responsibility for putting people in jail, but he's never apologized to the taxpayers. He's never taken accountability of saying this has happened on his watch, and he's pushed it aside until I, as Speaker of the House, established the Fraud Prevention and Agency Oversight Committee this legislative session, and it has finally drawn national attention. Something that has gone on for years, $1 billion or more of fraud under Governor Walz. Finally,
Governor Walz, he got to go. I think Minnesota's getting enough of him. Over $1 billion stolen in Minnesota fraud schemes. He had to have some part in that. You don't let this just go by and just don't say anything. I believe he's more for the Somalians because he's trying to continue to keep his votes so he can continue to be governor instead of being for the American people. You can't have people that's never been in charge of money be in charge of money. You're the governor of Minnesota. Minnesota, you have a problem. You have to understand that Governor Walz is not for you. He's had $1 billion. We know the one big case of $300 million missing, stolen, people getting caught, and they're saying it's easy to take money from the state of Minnesota. I think this was the same guy that, well, yeah, he was supposed to be Kamala Harris's vice president. I just don't understand like the thing that he does. How is he helping out Minnesota when he's just letting the money disappear? This is what happens when you have the blue involved, when you have them in charge. The money just disappears. It's like that in Minnesota. It was like that in New York. It was like that in Washington. It was like that in California. You get all this money and then you give it away to people that don't need it. And then you give it to them and they take it and they send it back to their country. He's definitely not for America. He's a Somalian president. He's definitely taking care of the Somalians. It's like the things that the people that have the fraud, the 300 million, those are Somalians. There was another one that I believe is a Somalian female for a couple million a year. Just when you want to wake up and understand that these people that are on the blue are not business savvy, they're giving money away, they're trying to buy votes. They use this money to buy votes, to keep the power by giving it to people that don't deserve it. How about you just give it to the people that need it? How about you just take care of the schools instead of bringing in immigrants so you can make sure you win by a landslide? I believe that Governor Walz won't be there next year. I believe that when he runs against this Republican, I don't think he'll be there because you can't be accountable for the $1 billion. The Feeding Our Future was a huge COVID-era fraud in Minnesota. It was a nonprofit involved in distributing pandemic-era federal aid, food assistance for children. Prosecutors say the group and a related organization submitted fraudulent claims alleging stealing hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe it was like 250 to 300 million. Oh, just gone. Yeah, that's the one they said, the restaurant, the guy said, oh yeah, I was feeding 6,000 kids and it was only like 30. Like, so where did the money go? Like, I just don't understand. Like, you know, and it's crazy though. He had people in his camp. When I'm reading here, it said that let's see what it said. Critics, including over 400 workers from the Minnesota Department of Human Services, accused Walt of ignoring early warnings about fraud and retaliating against whistleblowers. He was in on it. That's all that means. That's all I got to read. He was in on it. Why would you retaliate against people that's trying to save money and not get it taken from people that don't need it? He was in it.
Getting national attention. Thank you.
Speaking of that national attention, it's not just here on Fox News, but the New York Times wrote about it as well, saying that how fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. And this is also a lawyer for one of the defendants saying no one was doing anything about the red flags. It was like someone was stealing money from the cookie jar and they kept refilling it. Lisa, there were whistleblowers who were ignored?
That is what we are hearing. And we did put additional whistleblower protection in during this last legislative session. We also tried to put in an office of Inspector General, an independent office of Inspector General, and the Democrats in the House denied us that opportunity. It had been passed in the Senate, bipartisan, and we could not get it through the House as a protection, I believe, for Governor Walz, not wanting that office of Inspector General on an outside view looking in to see what he was really doing. I think he prevented that from going forward.
I'm going to read to you from the White House rapid response reaction saying that Tim Walz on the $1 billion fraud scandal that took place on his watch, I take responsibility for putting people in jail. It's not just Somalis. But they say this, number one, Walz didn't do jack other than let it happen. These are federal cases. And number two, 71 of the 75 people charged are of East African descent. Now, fraud can happen anywhere, under any circumstances, without proper safeguards. But what about this angle here in terms of the concentration of where the fraud was coming from?
I believe the money was going to the East African descent people, a.k.a. Somalians, because he wanted votes. He wanted to stay in power, and that's how he stayed in power. That's how Democrats stay in power. They bring immigrants in. A lot of them come in. They have a lot of kids, birthright citizenship. Now that's votes. Now they're able to say, okay, I'm going to pay you, but you got to make sure you vote to keep me in office so I can do some other things while I take care of you. Instead of just taking care of the American people. The problem with the Democrats, the reason why they don't like the Democrats is because they don't put the American people first. They put whoever's going to give them the most votes first. It used to be black folks. It used to be the LGBT community. Now it's immigrants. They don't care about the black people like that. They don't care about the LGBTQ community. They care about these immigrants because there's more of them, so that's how they can keep themselves in position. It's really simple if you think about it. But this is the one thing I don't like about democracy is that we got to vote for these things and all these things to happen. It should just be, you're gone. You lost $1 billion, bro. There's no even voting. You're gone. We're getting somebody else in there. Like, this is where democracy kind of messes up the country. It doesn't push the country forward. It pushes us back because now it's going to be taking forever for them to get him out of there. She has to win in order to get him out of there. Do you think he'll win? Do you think she'll win? I think she got a really good chance if they keep pushing this story and they keep this up. But $1 billion missed, and it's going 71 out of the 75 people that are charged with fraud are East African descent, Somalians. What does that mean? You're funneling money to the Somalians. That's all that means. You didn't even give the chance to the American people to get that funding. You gave it mostly to them. So what does that mean? That means that you were giving money to the Somalians, allegedly. But it's just like, if we keep it simple, it's there, clear as day. You didn't take care of the American people. You gave it to the East African people, and now they're the ones winning. And then, you caught some of them, but a lot of that money probably went back. And now they're building and doing whatever they're doing in their country with our money. So that's like grounds for immediate impeachment. That's not even nothing to vote on. This is where we have to start. There's some things in democracy we got to pull back and say, look, bro, you're a crook. Get them out of there. Jail time. $1 billion fraud. So it's not like it's like 100 million happened and you're like, hold on, well, let's stop this. You waited for it to go to a billion. That's crazy work. And this is the guy that was trying to be vice president. Are you serious?
As the governor said in the interview that we are a prosperous state and that would attract criminals, that is not true. We have poor leadership at the top here in Minnesota. What that means is criminals are going to be coming to Minnesota to do their criminal activity. That is a disrespect for taxpayer dollars, and it means at the very top of our state, fraud has been allowed to go forward for years unchecked. It is now thank you to President Trump and the White House for getting the attention with the U.S. Attorney's Office, making those prosecutions happen. That's what we are grateful for,
Lisa,
because we've been trying to sound the
let me jump in and
alarm
ask you
for
one
years.
last question. Sorry, I want to just ask you one last question before we run out of time. Do you believe that former Vice President Kamala Harris, who chose Walz to be her running mate in those 107 days of her campaign, do you think that she ever asked about this? I mean, when you're vetted to be the Vice President of the United States, should be a very serious vetting. Doesn't appear that anybody had this on their radar.
I don't know that she asked the question. I wouldn't be able to answer that, but obviously it was not vetted properly to see what was going on here in the state. We knew about fraud before Governor Walz ever became the vice president pick.
All right. Lisa, thank you. We'll follow the campaign.
He just got to go. That's all I can say. You know, I said enough in the video already. Just one of those things that we see he did wrong. $1 billion, fraud, gone, poof. $1 billion from taxpayers, poof. $1 billion from federal aid, poof. And he's like, oh, let me fix this. And then 71 out of 75 of the people that got the fraud or got caught for fraud in Minnesota are Somalians. 1 + 1 = 2. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and the channel as always. So I'm going to talk about everything. We're going to keep this thing going. Appreciate y'all.